In a quiet valley, tucked away from busy towns, lived a man named Old Man Hemlock. His name suited him well, for he was as sturdy and rooted as the hemlock trees that dotted the hills around his farm. Everyone in the valley knew Old Man Hemlock, not because he talked a lot, he hardly spoke a word, but because he was known for his gentle kindness. He had a way with animals, and even the wildest creatures seemed to trust him. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, each line telling a story of sun, wind, and countless quiet mornings watching the sunrise over his fields. His eyes, though, were always bright and held a deep, knowing twinkle. His farm was old, just like him. The farmhouse itself leaned a bit to one side, as if tired from standing for so many years. But the most interesting building on his farm was his barn. Oh, that barn. It was ancient, with wooden boards that had turned gray from decades of rain and sun. When the wind blew, it creaked and groaned like a sleeping giant waking up. The paint had peeled off long ago, leaving bare wood that hinted at many layers of forgotten colors. Inside, it smelled of hay, old wood, and secrets. The doors were huge and heavy, usually kept shut with a thick wooden bar. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Children in the valley would tell tales about the barn, wondering what mysteries it held. They'd whisper about noises they sometimes heard on windy nights, not quite animal sounds, but something bigger. Old Man Hemlock just smiled, a knowing smile, and never said a word. He went about his daily chores, always ending his day with a final check of his beloved ancient barn, making sure everything was just as it should be. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, a strange quiet fell over the valley. The air grew heavy, and the leaves on the trees stopped rustling. Old Man Hemlock, with his deep connection to nature, felt a shiver run down his spine. This wasn't just another storm brewing. This felt different, bigger. He hurried to secure his chickens, making sure the barn doors were latched extra tight, a task he always did, but this time with a sense of urgency. As night fully took hold, the sky ripped open. First came the wind, howling like a hungry wolf, tearing at the old farmhouse and rattling the windows fiercely. Rain followed, not in drops, but in sheets, slamming against the roof and pouring down the walls. Lightning flashed, bright as day, showing the world outside in stark, scary white. Thunder boomed right after, shaking the very ground Hemlock stood on. It was the loudest, most furious storm anyone in the valley had ever seen. Trees groaned and snapped, their branches flying through the air like broken toys. The river, usually a gentle ribbon, turned into a roaring monster overflowing its banks. Hemlock huddled, inside, listening to the storm's wild music, a symphony of destruction. He worried about his animals, about his old barn, which seemed to be fighting its own battle against the powerful wind. Every creak and groan from the barn now sounded like a cry for help. He had seen many storms in his long life, but this one felt like the earth itself was angry, a storm of truly epic proportions. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, painting the wrecked valley in hues of gray and soft orange, Old Man Hemlock ventured out. His farmhouse had held up, but his heart ached for his beloved barn. He pushed through fallen branches and mud, his eyes scanning for damage. The barn still stood, though a section of its roof had been ripped away, leaving a gaping hole. The heavy wooden doors, which he had latched so carefully, were now slightly ajar, pushed open by the storm's fury. A chill ran down his spine that had nothing to do with the morning air. A low, soft groan came from inside. It wasn't the sound of a cow or a horse. It was deeper, more human-like, yet wild. Hemlock, always brave, carefully pushed open the protesting doors. The morning light filtering through the roof hole revealed a scene of disarray. Hay was scattered, tools were overturned, and in the far corner, huddled amongst a pile of straw, was a shape. A very large shape. It was bigger than any bear he had ever seen, even bigger than the largest grizzly in the mountains. Its body was covered in thick, dark fur, matted with rain and mud. It lay curled, breathing heavily, and another soft moan escaped its lips. Hemlock's eyes widened. This wasn't an animal he knew. This creature had broad shoulders, long, powerful arms, and a head that looked almost human, but wild and untamed. It was hurt. He could see a deep cut on its leg, bleeding slowly into the straw. The creature shivered, not just from the cold, but from pain and fear. Hemlock felt his own fear quickly turn into something else. Pity. He had found something truly beyond belief in his old, creaky barn. Hemlock stood frozen for a moment, his mind trying to make sense of what his eyes were seeing. The stories he'd heard as a boy, whispers around campfires and old books, flooded his memory. Tales of giant, hairy creatures living deep in the untouched forests, shy and rarely seen. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the wild man of the woods. He'd always thought them just myths, fun, scary stories to tell. But now, here, in his own barn, lay the living proof. The creature shifted slightly, and its head lifted a little. Its eyes, large and dark, met Hemlock's. They weren't angry or fierce. Instead, they held a deep sadness, a raw fear that mirrored the shivers running down Hemlock's spine. The creature whimpered, a soft, broken sound that tugged at Hemlock's heart. It was clearly in great pain, its heavy breathing ragged. The storm must have caught it by surprise, forcing it to seek shelter, and in its hurry, it had gotten hurt. Hemlock took a slow, careful step closer. The creature flinched, pulling back as much as its injured leg would allow, trying to make itself smaller to disappear into the straw. Its body trembled. It wasn't trying to scare him. It was scared itself, badly hurt and completely vulnerable. Hemlock saw not a monster, but a being in distress. The wildness was there, yes, but so was something else, a deep, intelligent awareness in its fearful gaze. This wasn't just a big animal. This was Bigfoot, a creature of legend, and it was suffering. And in that moment, Old Man Hemlock knew he couldn't just leave it. The decision came to Hemlock without a second thought. His heart, always open to those in need, swelled with an unshakable resolve. He couldn't leave this creature, Bigfoot or not, to suffer alone. It was hurt, afraid, and far from its natural home. He knew the world outside would never understand, would only fear and perhaps harm this gentle giant. So, he would keep it secret. Moving slowly, so as not to startle the injured Bigfoot, Hemlock backed out of the barn. His mind raced, planning what he needed to do. First, food and water. He went to his kitchen, gathering apples, berries he had picked and dried, and a handful of fresh carrots from his garden. For water, he filled his largest bucket. He also grabbed some clean cloths and a bottle of antiseptic he kept for his farm animals, hoping he could tend to the wound. He returned to the barn, holding the food out gently. Bigfoot watched him with wide, cautious eyes, but didn't move. Hemlock placed the food and water on the straw a little distance from the creature, then slowly backed away, giving it space. He spoke in a low, soothing voice, the kind he used with nervous calves. "It's okay, big fellow. Just food and water. No harm." He spent the rest of the day fixing the hole in the barn roof, making sure the barn was as secure and private as possible. He made a path through the tall grass from his house to the barn just for him, so no one would see. From then on, every morning and evening, under the cloak of twilight or the first blush of dawn, Hemlock would secretly bring fresh food and water to his unexpected guest, a silent promise of care and protection forming between them. Days turned into weeks, and Old Man Hemlock's barn became a secret hospital. Every morning and evening, he would slip into the barn, carrying fresh food, clean water, and his little first aid kit. At first, Bigfoot remained shy, retreating into the deepest shadows whenever Hemlock entered. It would only eat after Hemlock had left, leaving behind empty bowls and scattered fruit peels. But Hemlock was patient. He spoke to the creature in his calm, low voice, telling it about the weather, about his farm, about the quiet life they shared. He never pushed, never made sudden movements. Slowly, a change began. One afternoon, Hemlock found the courage to approach the injured leg. He gently placed a warm, wet cloth on the wound, and Bigfoot, instead of pulling away, simply watched him with those deep, dark eyes. It let out a soft sigh, almost like a sigh of relief. From that day on, the creature seemed to understand Hemlock meant no harm. It would no longer hide when he came in. Instead, it would watch him, sometimes even moving a little closer to take a piece of fruit directly from his hand. Its whimpers of pain lessened, replaced by soft grunts of contentment when Hemlock cleaned its wound or brought it a particularly ripe apple. A strange, wordless understanding grew between the old farmer and the legendary beast. It was a trust built on quiet care, gentle hands, and the shared secret of their hidden world in the old, creaky barn. The fear in Bigfoot's eyes slowly faded, replaced by a glimmer of something new, a quiet, growing friendship. As the trust deepened, Hemlock felt a need to give his secret friend a name. Bigfoot felt too much like a story, not a friend. Looking at the large, kind eyes, and the way it sometimes fiddled with bits of straw, he thought of something warm and familiar. "Barnaby," he whispered one day, offering a handful of fresh berries. The creature tilted its head, a soft huff escaping its lips, as if considering the sound. From then on, it was Barnaby. With Barnaby's leg healing, Hemlock saw more of his true self. Barnaby was incredibly gentle. He would carefully take food from Hemlock's hand, his huge fingers surprisingly delicate. He never made a sudden move that might scare the old man. Hemlock noticed Barnaby would often move fallen tools back into place or push stray bales of hay into neat piles. It was as if he understood the need for order. One afternoon, a stubborn latch on a storage bin wouldn't open. Hemlock grunted, struggling with it. Barnaby watched for a moment, then, with a soft grunt, reached out a massive finger and with surprising skill flicked the latch open. Hemlock gasped. Barnaby then looked at him with those deep, knowing eyes, almost as if to say, "Was that helpful?" It was clear Barnaby wasn't just a simple animal. He was clever, understanding more than Hemlock had first thought. He learned where Hemlock kept the apples, and sometimes, when Hemlock arrived, Barnaby would already be sitting by the apple barrel, patiently waiting. He would even leave little gifts for Hemlock, shiny pebbles, a perfectly shaped feather, or a cluster of wild mushrooms. These small acts showed Hemlock that Barnaby possessed not just intelligence, but a thoughtful, gentle heart. The weeks of care turned into months, and then into years. Barnaby's leg healed completely, but he never left the barn. It had become his home, a safe haven from a world that wouldn't understand him. And for Old Man Hemlock, Barnaby became more than just a secret. He became family. The quiet farmer, who lived a mostly solitary life, found companionship in the gentle giant. Barnaby knew Hemlock's routines better than anyone. He would be waiting patiently by the barn door when Hemlock arrived with food, sometimes letting out a soft rumble of greeting. He learned the sound of Hemlock's footsteps, distinguishing them from any other sound on the farm. Hemlock, in turn, learned Barnaby's moods from the subtle shifts in his deep eyes or the way he moved his massive head. Their bond was built on silent understanding and shared moments. Hemlock would sit on an old overturned bucket, sometimes reading aloud from an old book, knowing Barnaby was listening intently from his cozy bed of straw. Barnaby would often lean his great head close, his soft fur brushing Hemlock's arm, a comforting presence. The barn, once just an old building, now felt like a home filled with warmth and a unique kind of love. The children in the valley still whispered about the creaky barn, but they could never have guessed the incredible secret that lived inside. A secret that had now been kept for decades, growing deeper with each passing season. Barnaby was not just a creature in the barn. He was a silent, furry member of the Hemlock family. Keeping Barnaby a secret for decades was no easy task, especially in a small valley where everyone knew everyone else's business. Old Man Hemlock had to become surprisingly clever. He developed a routine that kept curious eyes away from his barn. He always fed Barnaby very early in the morning, just as the sun was thinking about rising, or late at night, long after everyone else was asleep. He made sure to carry Barnaby's food in covered buckets, so no one would see the large quantities of fruit and vegetables he was taking to the barn. If a neighbor came by, Hemlock would always meet them at the farmhouse, never letting them wander too close to the barn. He'd talk about the weather or his crops, gently steering conversations away from his old wooden building. "Just an old barn," he'd often say with a shrug. "Nothing much to see in there." He even put up a "Keep Out" sign, hinting that the barn was unstable, which helped keep the more adventurous children away. Barnaby, too, learned to be incredibly quiet. He would stay deep inside, barely making a sound when people were near. Hemlock taught him a special soft whistle that meant danger, and Barnaby would immediately go still. Once, a nosy salesman tried to peek into the barn, but Hemlock quickly distracted him with a story about a faulty tractor, pulling him away from the barn before he could see anything. Over the years, Hemlock became a master of subtle misdirection, a quiet guardian, ensuring his gentle giant remained hidden from a world that wasn't ready for him. As the years rolled on, Barnaby's presence became more than just companionship. It became a quiet, powerful help on the farm. Under the cloak of night, when the valley slept soundly, Barnaby would often join Hemlock in his chores. The old farmer had grown older, his back aching more often, but Barnaby's strength made light work of the heaviest tasks. Barnaby would lift huge bales of hay with ease, stacking them perfectly high in the loft where Hemlock could never reach. He could move heavy sacks of grain that would take Hemlock several trips, carrying them gently in his massive arms. Once, a stubborn old tree stump needed to be removed from the field. Hemlock had struggled with it for days, but Barnaby, with a thoughtful look, simply put his powerful hands around it and, with a quiet grunt, pulled it straight out of the ground, roots and all. What truly amazed Hemlock was not just Barnaby's strength, but his incredible gentleness. Despite his size, he never broke anything. When he handled the delicate young plants in the garden, his touch was as soft as a breeze. He would help Hemlock mend fences, holding posts steady while Hemlock hammered, always careful not to get in the way. Barnaby seemed to understand exactly what needed to be done, anticipating Hemlock's next move. Their nighttime work together was a dance of silent understanding, a secret partnership that kept the farm running smoothly. The valley folk often wondered how Old Man Hemlock, growing older, managed to keep his farm so well. They never guessed the silent, strong, and incredibly gentle helper that worked beside him in the dark. Despite Barnaby's silent help, time marched on, and Old Man Hemlock felt its heavy tread. His steps became slower, his back curved a little more each year, and the lines on his face deepened with age, not just sun. The once easy tasks of farming now left him weary, even with Barnaby's aid. He found himself needing more rest, and sometimes he would forget where he left his tools, a new worry creeping into his sharp mind. As his own strength faded, a deep, heavy concern began to weigh on Hemlock's heart. What would happen to Barnaby when he was no longer there? Barnaby had lived his entire life in the barn, safe and hidden, protected by Hemlock's watchful eye. He was used to the routine, to the food, to the quiet safety. The thought of Barnaby being discovered by strangers, or worse, being left alone and uncared for, filled Hemlock with dread. He would often sit in the barn, Barnaby gently rumbling beside him, and gaze at his furry friend with a troubled look. Who would understand Barnaby's gentle nature? Who would know his favorite berries, or how he liked to sit quietly when Hemlock read? The world outside was not kind to things it didn't understand, and Barnaby was the greatest mystery of all. Hemlock knew his time was drawing short, and he desperately needed to find a way to ensure Barnaby's future. A future where he would remain safe, loved, and free. This new worry shadowed his days, a heavy cloud over the quiet peace he had built with his secret family. Just as Old Man Hemlock's worries for Barnaby grew, a new face appeared in the quiet valley. Her name was Clara, a young journalist with bright, curious eyes and a notebook always at the ready. She wasn't from the valley, but from a bustling city far away, and she was always on the hunt for a good story, something truly out of the ordinary. Clara had heard whispers, faint at first, then growing a little louder as she talked to locals in the general store. Tales of strange happenings on Hemlock's farm. People mentioned the farmer's unusual strength for his age, the way his crops seemed to grow better than anyone else's, and those old stories about the creaking barn and odd noises at night. Most folks shrugged it off as old wives' tales. But Clara's journalist's instinct told her there might be more to it. She drove her dusty car down the winding road leading to Hemlock's farm, her heart thrumming with excitement. This could be it, the big story she had always dreamed of. She imagined headlines, "Mystery Solved on Quiet Farm," or "Unexplained Phenomenon in the Valley." She didn't know what she was looking for exactly, but the feeling that something extraordinary was hidden on that old farm was strong. Clara was determined to find out. Her arrival brought a new kind of tension to the valley, a threat to the peaceful, hidden life Old Man Hemlock and Barnaby had built over so many quiet years. The outside world, in the form of a curious young woman, was finally knocking on their door. Clara, with her city smarts and quick questions, soon made her way to Hemlock's farmhouse. She smiled brightly, introduced herself, and explained she was writing a story about the unique history of the valley's old farms. Hemlock, polite but firm, offered her a glass of water and listened patiently. He was well practiced at keeping secrets, and Clara's sharp gaze didn't faze him. She tried different angles. She asked about his long life on the farm, about old traditions, about any unusual wildlife he might have seen. Hemlock answered in short, simple sentences, always giving just enough information to be polite, but never enough to reveal anything important. When she subtly tried to steer the conversation towards the barn, asking about its age and history, Hemlock simply shrugged. Just an old building, child. Needs a lot of fixing up, not much to tell. Clara, however, was not easily put off. She lingered, trying to catch him off guard. She noticed the path worn through the tall grass leading directly to the barn, a path he seemed to use often. She saw the "Keep Out" sign, which only made her more curious. She even tried to walk towards the barn once, pretending to admire a flower. But Hemlock, with surprising speed for his age, gently guided her back towards her car, politely saying he had chores to do. He kept his face calm, his eyes twinkling as always. But inside, his heart pounded with the fierce protectiveness of a lion guarding its cub. Barnaby's secret was his to keep, and he would guard it with every fiber of his being. Barnaby, with his deep wisdom and sensitive spirit, could feel the change in Hemlock. The old man, usually so calm and steady, now carried a new heaviness, a quiet worry that clung to him like a shadow. Barnaby noticed Hemlock's slower movements, the way his shoulders slumped a little more, and the troubled look in his eyes when he thought Barnaby wasn't watching. The arrival of the new woman, Clara, also made Barnaby uneasy. He heard the strange sounds of her car, smelled her unfamiliar scent, and sensed the sharp curiosity that radiated from her. He could tell Hemlock was trying extra hard to keep things hidden, and this effort made Hemlock even more stressed. Because of this, Barnaby started to act differently. He wasn't as playful as before. He would often sit quietly in his corner, his head bowed, letting out soft, mournful huffs. He didn't always come forward eagerly for his favorite apples. Sometimes, when Hemlock sat to read, Barnaby wouldn't lean in for comfort. Instead, he would simply watch the old man with a sorrowful expression, his big, dark eyes reflecting Hemlock's own unspoken fears. It was clear that Barnaby understood, in his own way, that something important was shifting, and that Hemlock's long-held worries about the future were now stronger than ever. The sadness settled over Barnaby like a heavy blanket, a silent echo of Hemlock's growing concern for what lay ahead. The sadness in Barnaby's eyes was a mirror reflecting Hemlock's own deep worry. The old farmer knew he couldn't keep this secret forever, not now that he was old, and the world was growing smaller and more curious. The time had come. He had to tell someone. But this wasn't just any secret. It was the biggest, most unbelievable secret in the world. Who could possibly understand? Who would believe him? More importantly, who could he trust with Barnaby's life? He thought of his neighbors, good people, but too likely to be scared, or worse, to see Barnaby as a way to become famous. He thought of doctors or scientists, but they might want to study Barnaby, to put him in a cage, to take away his freedom. Hemlock's heart ached at the thought. Barnaby was gentle, but he was wild at heart too. He needed to be free. He spent many sleepless nights turning the problem over in his mind. He needed someone with a kind heart, an open mind, and a deep love for all living things. Someone who would see Barnaby not as a monster or a scientific discovery, but as a friend. Someone who would understand the importance of keeping such a precious secret. As the journalist Clara continued to poke around the valley, Hemlock knew his time was running out. He had to choose, and he had to choose wisely. His choice would decide Barnaby's entire future. After much thought, Hemlock realized there was only one person he could truly trust. Not a neighbor, not a scientist, but his granddaughter, Lily. Lily was a special girl, about 10 years old, with eyes as bright and kind as a summer morning. She visited her grandpa often, spending her summers on the farm, helping him with the chickens and picking berries. She had a gentle heart, a quiet way of listening, and a deep, natural love for all creatures, big and small. Even the shyest forest animals would sometimes let Lily get close. Hemlock remembered a time when Lily had found a baby bird that had fallen from its nest. Instead of being scared, she had carefully picked it up, talked to it softly, and spent hours making sure it was safe until its mother returned. He watched how she treated his old dog, always with a soft touch and a sweet word. Lily understood that every living thing deserved kindness and respect. He knew it would be a huge secret for a young girl to carry, but he also knew Lily was strong and wise beyond her years. She wouldn't blab to her friends or try to make a show of Barnaby. She would understand the importance of his freedom and his peace. Lily was the only one. He made up his mind that very night. He would tell Lily his greatest secret, the one that had lived in his barn for decades. It was a big risk, but for Barnaby's future, it was a risk he had to take. One quiet afternoon, Hemlock called Lily to the farmhouse. His voice was serious, a tone she rarely heard. "Lilybug," he said, using his special nickname for her, "I have something very important to show you, a secret I've kept for a very long time." He led her to the barn, not through the usual entrance, but through a small, hidden side door he rarely used. Inside, the barn was dim and smelled of hay and old wood, just as always. But then, as her eyes adjusted, Lily saw him, Barnaby. He sat quietly in his usual corner, a massive, furry figure, easily twice the size of her grandpa. His deep eyes, usually so sad lately, looked at her with a gentle curiosity. Lily gasped, a tiny sound that barely escaped her lips. Her jaw dropped. It was like seeing a picture from a storybook come to life, only much, much bigger. She stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and a tiny bit of fear. She had heard the whispers about Bigfoot, of course, but to see one, a real one, right here in her grandpa's barn, it was beyond belief. Hemlock gently put a hand on her shoulder. "This is Barnaby," he whispered. "He's been with me a long, long time." Lily slowly looked from Barnaby to her grandpa, then back to Barnaby. Her awe quickly turned to a different kind of feeling. She saw the gentle way Barnaby watched them, the way his huge chest rose and fell with quiet breaths. But she also saw how vulnerable he looked, how out of place in a world that would never understand him. A knot of worry formed in her stomach. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "What if someone finds him? What will happen?" Her amazement was now mixed with a deep, protective fear for this incredible, secret creature. Lily's initial fear for Barnaby quickly softened as she watched her grandpa interact with the giant creature. She saw the gentle way Hemlock stroked Barnaby's fur, the quiet conversations they had with just their eyes, and the deep comfort they found in each other's presence. She realized this wasn't just an animal her grandpa was hiding. It was a cherished friend, a member of their small, secret family. Hemlock sat down on the straw beside Barnaby, and Lily watched as Barnaby slowly, carefully, leaned his massive head against Hemlock's shoulder. It was a gesture of pure love and trust, and it brought tears to Lily's eyes. She understood then why her grandpa had kept this secret for so long, and why he was so worried about Barnaby's future. The bond between them was as strong and as real as any she had ever seen. Looking at her grandpa, his face etched with worry but his eyes still full of love for Barnaby, Lily made a silent promise to herself. "Grandpa," she said, her voice firm now, "don't worry. We'll figure something out. I'll help you. I promise." She reached out a small hand, and Barnaby, sensing her intent, gently nudged his head against her palm. His fur was surprisingly soft. In that moment, a new link was forged, adding Lily to the silent pact of protection. Hemlock smiled, a true relieved smile, for the first time in weeks. He knew he had made the right choice. Together, they would find a way to keep Barnaby safe and free. While Hemlock and Lily were forging their new alliance, Clara, the journalist, was not giving up. Her gut feeling that something truly special was happening on the Hemlock farm only grew stronger. She had spent days observing from a distance, watching the old man's careful routines, the way he always seemed to avoid having anyone near his barn. The "Keep Out" sign now seemed less like a warning and more like a deliberate cover-up. One evening, under the dim light of a crescent moon, Clara returned to the farm. She was careful, moving quietly through the tall grass, trying not to disturb anything. She didn't want to be seen. In her backpack, she carried small, battery-powered cameras that could take pictures even in the dark. She found a few good spots near the edge of the woods that overlooked the barn, places where the cameras would be hidden by thick bushes and old trees. With quick, practiced movements, she tied the cameras to branches, pointing their lenses towards the barn doors and the worn path Hemlock used. Each camera had a motion sensor, meaning it would snap a picture if anything big moved in front of it. "Now," she whispered to herself, "we'll see what secrets old man Hemlock is hiding." She felt a thrill of excitement and a touch of guilt. She knew this was an invasion, but the pull of the story of a possible discovery that could change everything was too strong to ignore. The quiet peace of Hemlock's farm was about to be broken in a very big way. Barnaby, with his sharp senses, knew something was different that night. He could smell the lingering scent of a stranger, faint but distinct, near the barn. He also heard the tiny clicks of the hidden cameras, sounds that humans might miss but that were clear to his sensitive ears. He understood they were a danger to his peaceful home and to Hemlock's secret. As Hemlock slept, worried but unaware of the new threat, Barnaby made a brave decision. He wouldn't let the cameras catch him near the barn. Instead, he would lead the curious journalist away deep into the woods, protecting his old friend's trust. Quietly, with incredible stealth for his size, Barnaby slipped out of the barn. He moved away from the cameras, circling wide until he was far past them, closer to where Clara had parked her car. Then, with a deep breath, he let out a low, mournful howl, a sound that echoed through the quiet valley. It was a sound designed to draw attention, to be heard. Clara, who was sleeping in her car, jolted awake, her heart hammered in her chest. That sound. It was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was wild, ancient, and exactly what she was looking for. Grabbing her best camera, she quickly got out of her car and started running towards the sound, deeper and deeper into the forest, away from Hemlock's barn. Barnaby, seeing her follow, moved further into the trees, making just enough noise to guide her, but never letting her get a clear view. He was a silent, furry guardian, leading the threat away, ensuring his home and Hemlock's secret remained safe for another night. Clara, breathless and excited, followed the strange howls deeper into the shadowy forest. Her camera was ready, flashing in the dark as she tried to capture whatever elusive creature was making those sounds. She caught glimpses of a large, dark shape moving quickly between the trees, always just out of clear sight. It was fast, too fast for her to get a steady shot. The next morning, tired but buzzing with energy, Clara rushed back to her car to check her cameras. She pulled out the memory cards, her hands trembling with anticipation. She plugged them into her laptop, eager to see what she had captured. The motion sensor cameras near the barn had nothing. Barnaby had cleverly avoided them. But the camera she had held herself, while chasing the sounds in the woods, had a few pictures. She zoomed in, her heart pounding. There, in a few grainy, blurry photos, was a massive, dark figure. It was definitely big, covered in fur, and stood on two legs. But the images were too dark, too shaky, and too far away to make out any clear details. One photo showed a hint of a broad shoulder, another a fuzzy outline against a tree, but nothing that screamed Bigfoot or could be used as solid proof. Clara sighed, a mix of disappointment and continued wonder. She had seen something. She was sure of it. But she had no real evidence. The pictures were just blurry shapes, easily dismissed as a bear, a trick of the light, or even a person in a costume. She couldn't prove anything. Old Man Hemlock's secret, thanks to Barnaby's cleverness, remained safe, at least from Clara's cameras. For now, the legend remained just that. A legend, shrouded in the mystery of the deep woods. With Clara's blurry photos posing no real threat for now, Hemlock and Lily knew they had a small window of time. They spent hours talking quietly in the barn, Barnaby listening intently from his corner. Their main goal was clear. Barnaby needed a safe place, a home where he could be truly free and never be found by curious people like Clara. Lily, with her young, fresh ideas, and Hemlock, with his years of knowing the land, made a good team. They spread out old maps of the valley and the vast forests surrounding it. Hemlock pointed out hidden caves, dense thickets, and remote mountain streams where few humans ever ventured. Lily thought about what Barnaby would need: plenty of berries and plants to eat, fresh water, and a place to shelter from bad weather. They talked about the best time for Barnaby to leave, when the forest would offer the most food and cover. They also discussed how to prepare him for a life truly on his own, even though he had been mostly wild before. Hemlock explained that Barnaby had been drawn to the farm for its safety and easy food. But his true home was the wild. Lily suggested leaving trails of his favorite foods to guide him towards his new home. It was a bittersweet plan. The thought of Barnaby leaving filled them with sadness, but also with a strong sense of purpose. They were doing this for him, for his freedom and safety. Together, they mapped out a route, a careful, secret journey that would lead Barnaby back to the heart of the wild, where he could live out his days in peace, forever hidden from the world. The map spread out on the old barn floor became their world for a few days. Hemlock's finger traced lines over mountains and through valleys, while Lily's keen eyes looked for green patches, marking the densest parts of the forest. They both knew Barnaby couldn't just wander anywhere. He needed a very special place, a true sanctuary. "It has to be far from people," Hemlock said, his voice low and serious. "A place where no hunters go, no hikers stumble upon. Somewhere he can truly be himself." Lily remembered stories of old-growth forests, places so ancient and wild that few dared to enter. "What about the Whispering Peaks, Grandpa?" she asked, pointing to a dark green area on the map. "Mom always said it was too wild, too scary to go there." Hemlock's eyes lit up. The Whispering Peaks. It was a vast, untouched wilderness, known for its towering trees, deep canyons, and hidden caves. It was far enough from the valley, and its reputation for being untamed would keep most people away. It was perfect. They imagined Barnaby living there, surrounded by nature, finding new berries and fresh streams, living peacefully as a true wild creature. They planned how to guide him there. They would leave a trail of his favorite foods, apples, wild honey, sweet roots, stretching from the barn to the edge of the Whispering Peaks. It would be a long journey, but a necessary one. The thought of Barnaby being free, safe from the prying eyes of the world, brought a quiet comfort. to Hemlock's worried heart. This hidden, protected forest would be Barnaby's true home, a place where his legend could live on, unseen and undisturbed. The chosen night arrived, a clear, star-filled evening, perfect for a secret journey. A heavy quiet hung in the air, different from the storm's fury, a quiet filled with the weight of goodbyes. Hemlock and Lily had spent the day preparing Barnaby's special trail of food, leading it deep into the woods toward the Whispering Peaks. Now they stood in the barn, a lantern casting soft, dancing shadows around them. Barnaby seemed to sense the importance of the moment. He sat patiently, his big eyes fixed on Hemlock, then on Lily. He let out a soft rumble, a sound that held both understanding and a touch of sadness. Hemlock's heart felt heavy, a mix of sorrow at letting his friend go and a deep hope for Barnaby's future. Lily, too, felt a lump in her throat, her eyes glistening. She reached out and gently stroked Barnaby's massive, furry arm. "It's time, old friend," Hemlock whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Time for you to go home, to the big woods where you belong." Barnaby slowly rose to his full height, a magnificent, silent giant. He looked at the familiar barn, his home for decades, then at Hemlock and Lily, his family. It was a moment filled with unspoken words, a shared understanding of what this departure meant. Sadness filled the air, but beneath it, a strong current of hope flowed. Hope that Barnaby would be truly free, truly safe, living the life he was meant to live, away from the prying eyes of the human world. This was not an ending, but a new, hopeful beginning. As Hemlock finished his whispered farewell, Barnaby moved. He didn't turn to leave right away. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate step towards the old farmer. Lily watched, holding her breath, as the massive creature bent down, his huge, furry head coming close to Hemlock's. Then, with surprising gentleness, Barnaby wrapped one enormous arm around Hemlock, pulling him into a soft, silent hug. It wasn't a squeeze of immense strength, but a tender embrace, full of warmth and gratitude. Hemlock, leaning into the soft fur, felt a lifetime of shared secrets and quiet companionship in that hug. It was Barnaby's way of saying thank you, a deep, wordless message for all the kindness, the food, the shelter, and most of all, the love and protection Hemlock had given him for so many decades. Lily saw the pure, unspoken emotion pass between them. It was a moment that needed no words, only hearts understanding each other. She watched as Barnaby gently released her grandpa, his dark eyes meeting Hemlock's one last time. In those eyes, Hemlock saw not just sadness, but a flicker of peace, a quiet acceptance of his new journey. The hug was a final, precious gift, a memory Hemlock would carry with him always, a silent promise that their bond would never truly be broken, even across the vast wilderness. After the silent, heartfelt goodbye, Barnaby turned and walked towards the open barn door. He paused for a moment at the threshold, his massive silhouette framed against the starry night sky. He took one last, deep breath of the familiar barn air, then stepped out into the darkness. Hemlock and Lily stood side by side, their hands clasped, watching from the doorway. Barnaby moved with a quiet grace, following the trail of food they had laid for him. He moved through the tall grass and into the shadows of the nearby trees, becoming one with the night. They watched as his large form slowly faded, swallowed by the deep woods, guided by the moonlight filtering through the leaves. The silence that fell after Barnaby disappeared was profound. It was a silence that echoed with decades of shared life, of secrets kept, and of a friendship unlike any other. Tears streamed down Lily's face, And Hemlock, though his eyes were dry, felt a deep ache in his chest. But through the sadness, there was also a powerful sense of peace. They knew Barnaby was no longer confined, no longer hiding in fear. He was where he belonged, in the vast, wild embrace of nature, free to roam the ancient forests of the Whispering Peaks. They stood there for a long time, long after Barnaby was completely out of sight, listening to the night sounds. The wind whispered through the trees, a gentle lullaby for a creature finding his true home. Hemlock squeezed Lily's hand. Barnaby was gone, but he was finally, truly free. And that was all that mattered. A few weeks later, Clara's article appeared in a small, unusual newspaper. The headline read, "Strange howls and blurry shapes. Is Bigfoot hiding in our valleys?" The story described her visit to Old Man Hemlock's farm, the old man's secretive nature, and the mysterious sounds she heard in the woods. She included the grainy, dark photos she had managed to capture. But without clear, undeniable proof, the story didn't make the big splash Clara had hoped for. Most people who read it chuckled. "Just another Bigfoot story," they'd say, shaking their heads. Those pictures could be anything. A bear, a shadow, even a person playing a trick. The local valley folk, who had always known Old Man Hemlock to be a bit odd but harmless, simply shrugged. They'd heard those kinds of whispers before. The newspaper piece became a curious, short-lived hua-ti. It didn't change the world, and it certainly didn't bring a swarm of curious people to Hemlock's farm. The blurry photos were not enough to convince anyone important, and Clara, frustrated but still believing in what she had heard and seen, eventually moved on to other stories. Hemlock's secret once again was safe. The world wasn't ready to believe, and Barnaby was now far away, a true legend once more, hidden deep in the Whispering Peaks. Just as Hemlock had wished. The valley returned to its quiet rhythms, unaware of the incredible truth that had almost been uncovered. With Barnaby safely away in the Whispering Peaks, and Clara's story fading into forgotten newspaper clippings, a profound peace settled over Old Man Hemlock. The heavy worry that had shadowed his final years lifted, replaced by a quiet contentment. He continued his farming, his steps still slow, but his heart was lighter. He often sat on his porch swing, gazing towards the distant, dark peaks of the mountains, a soft smile on his lips. He imagined Barnaby there, thriving in the wild, surrounded by the towering trees and rushing streams, truly free. He knew his friend was safe, and that knowledge was a comfort more precious than any earthly treasure. His bond with Lily deepened even further, a shared secret that bound them with a unique love. They would sometimes talk about Barnaby, whispering his name, recalling his gentle ways and clever tricks. These memories were cherished, kept close to their hearts. Hemlock felt a quiet pride in what he had done. In the decades he had protected a creature that the world would have misunderstood and perhaps harmed. He had given Barnaby a life, and then a true home. Old Man Hemlock lived out his remaining years peacefully, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of his farm and the enduring love of his granddaughter. He had faced his greatest fear, what would happen to Barnaby, and had found a solution rooted in kindness and courage. His life, though outwardly simple, held a magnificent, unbelievable secret, and he carried the warmth of that secret and the silent gratitude of his friend until his very last, peaceful breath. After her grandpa passed away peacefully, Lily became the sole keeper of the incredible secret. The old barn, once Barnaby's home, stood quietly on the farm, now truly empty, yet filled with memories only Lily understood. She grew up, but the special bond with her grandpa and the gentle giant never faded. From time to time, when the seasons changed and a quiet longing filled her heart, Lily would walk the familiar path from the farmhouse towards the edge of the whispering peaks. She wouldn't go deep into the forest, knowing that Barnaby needed his space and his freedom. Instead, she would stand at the tree line, a quiet figure surrounded by the ancient woods, and simply listen. She imagined Barnaby among the tall trees, perhaps watching her from a distance, just as he used to watch her grandpa. She felt his presence in the rustling leaves, in the calls of the wild birds, and in the deep, peaceful silence of the forest. She sometimes left small offerings, a handful of fresh berries, a ripe apple, near an old, gnarled tree that marked the beginning of Barnaby's territory. Lily carried the secret not as a burden, but as a precious gift, a link to her kind grandpa and to a world of wonder hidden just beyond human sight. She grew into a woman who understood that some of the most beautiful truths are those that remain unseen, whispered only by the wind, and held gently in a loving heart. The memory of Barnaby, the gentle giant, was a warm, constant presence in her life, a reminder of kindness, trust, and the wild magic of the world. And so, the story of Old Man Hemlock and Barnaby became a quiet legend, passed down through Lily's heart. It reminds us that the world holds many wonders, some seen, some unseen, and perhaps some are best left that way. Not every mystery needs to be solved, not every secret exposed to the bright, harsh light of the world. Some truths are more beautiful when they remain just beyond our grasp, protected by those who understand their delicate nature. The tale also teaches us about kindness. Old Man Hemlock didn't see a monster when he found Barnaby. He saw a hurt creature in need of help. His simple act of kindness, born from a gentle heart, led to a friendship that lasted for decades, crossing the boundaries between human and legend. It showed that compassion can be found in the most unexpected places. A quiet farm, an old barn, the heart of a solitary farmer. Lily, as she grew older, continued to honor this lesson. She knew that the true magic wasn't just that Bigfoot existed, but in the love and trust that grew between him and her grandpa. She understood that sometimes protecting a creature means letting it be free, even if it means saying goodbye. The valley remained a place of gentle whispers and familiar routines, forever touched by an unbelievable secret that only a few ever truly knew. And in that, there was a quiet, lasting beauty.